Last week I talked about how easy it is for us to focus on other people's sins and completely miss our own. Well, today I want to look at a story that I think illustrates this point so clearly. And it's a story from Jesus' life. And I think it's included in the Bible as a reminder that we need, and also as a warning that it's so easy for us to do this. The story is found in John chapter 8, and we call it the story of the woman caught in adultery. I think it would be better called the story of the religious men caught in hypocrisy. And I think the fact that we've misnamed it or mislabeled it just reveals just how we miss the point of this story. And in the story, Jesus is teaching in the temple, and an angry mob of religious men burst in and they interrupt him, and they throw a woman down at his feet that they've caught in the act of adultery. And they ask Jesus if they should stone her like the law commands. Get the picture of what's happening here. A group of men have aligned themselves as a group against this one woman who they have determined her sins are worse than theirs and bad enough that she should be judged for her sinfulness. And they're literally standing there with rocks in their hands, ready to stone her. It's such an ugly scene. And unfortunately, it's a scene that repeats itself over and over again. Admittedly, in less extreme versions, we're not always holding rocks, but religious people are often aligning themselves, blind to their own sinfulness, and aligning themselves against the sins of someone else or some other group who they've determined their sins are bad enough that they should be judged, and they're passing judgment and looking for others to do the same. I think it's important for us to see that the angry mob thinks they're right. They think their stand against her sinfulness is just and right. It's the right thing for them to do. It makes them righteous. Jesus obviously disagrees. And so they press Jesus. How should we respond? Should we stone this woman? And Jesus responds to them by bending down, and he begins to write in the dirt with his finger. And I wish we knew what he was writing. We can't be clear. All we can do is guess. But we do know that whatever it was he wrote in the dirt was enough to disarm them. Literally, because they put their stones down. They press Jesus for an answer. And he says, okay, go ahead and stone her. That's what the law commands. But let whoever among you is without sin be the first one to throw a stone. And with that, they drop their stones and they go home. It's not that she wasn't guilty. It's not that she hadn't sinned. She had sinned. She was guilty. It's just that the mob, as fellow sinners who were also guilty and also worthy of punishment, were in no place to stand in judgment over her or against her. And for her sake, I'm really glad that in the moment at least, they recognized that that was the case. This story is one of my favorite stories from the life of Jesus because it's such a clear picture of Jesus defending a sinner just like me from an angry mob of fellow sinners who are blind to their own sin and standing in judgment of someone else. It's our only hope that Jesus, as our defender, as our advocate, is our only hope as sinful people. I love what John says in 1 John chapter 2. He says, I wish that you wouldn't sin, but I know that you will. We all do. And we're glad that when that happens, that we have Jesus as our defender and our advocate. That's who Jesus is to us. He is our defender and an advocate. As the only righteous one, he's the only one who could stand in judgment against us, but instead he stands between us and the Father as our advocate. That's who Jesus is to you and me. If you know the story, you know that after the mob disperses, Jesus has a conversation with this woman where he helps her up, and he says that he doesn't condemn her, and then he encourages her to change her lifestyle. There's only one valid takeaway from this story, in my opinion, and that's that none of us are in a position to stand in judgment of anyone else. As one sinner, I'm in no position to stand in judgment of another sinner. And I have any other takeaway from this story, then I have completely missed the point. No, unfortunately, when we read this story, often the response to this story that I hear isn't about Jesus standing down the angry mob. It's always about, yeah, but Jesus had a conversation with this one where he told her to go and sin no more, that following Jesus always requires lifestyle change. And I would say, yes, following Jesus always requires lifestyle change. It always leads to lifestyle change. But Jesus has this conversation with this woman one-on-one. The angry mob wasn't part of it. The angry mob was gone. And then Jesus pulls her aside and has a quiet conversation where he encourages her. Why? Because he wants better for her. He always wants better for us. And so he does encourage her to live a better lifestyle. And I need a conversation with Jesus where he encourages me to live a better lifestyle. But that's a conversation for Jesus to have with me. And you need that conversation. But that's a conversation for you to have between you and Jesus and no one else. If your takeaway from this story is, yeah, but Jesus told her to go and live a different lifestyle, then I think you've completely missed the point. You're still standing there, rock in hand, focused on her sin rather than your own. What we need to do is to drop our rocks, go home, and mind our own business. I'll see you next Sunday.